Hi, this is McLaughlin. This is my reflective vlog for week 16. This was the 12th to the 14th, and basically it is competitive brief part 2. This was the second and final week of competitive brief, and then this week I kind of just finished up planning and actually filmed all 3 of my adverts. I'll go into what I've done on the Top Chance advert on Friday, but I did replan the Top Chance advert in accordance to my target setting of last week, and that was to redo it. Overall, talking overall for this week, I think it was a pretty solid week. I managed to get everything done by the deadline on Friday. I felt that the 3 ads that I made really kind of embraced the briefs and stuff like that, and very kind of, for the quick turnaround they were, there was about a day, I think they were really interesting, stuff like that, and really shown a big progression from even the first film I made in this year to now. It's a lot of colour grading, editing, really good music. Based stuff. So I think overall it was a pretty decent week. I did have some problems across the week and pros cons, but let's just go into the first day, and that was Wednesday. Okay, so Wednesday. Wednesday's always been my smallest day. It's only half a day compared to most days that I'm a bit more full on and stuff like that. But this was the day I decided to film the gift gap ad. Just to recap the gift gap ad, this was an advert that would involve a man breaking up with a phone and then responsibly deciding to recycle it. I think it's about 2 minutes, so filming wise it did not take that long. I decided to film on the college campus mostly because one, locations are really difficult to find legally and stuff like that, and two, the kind of script I built it around was built for a kind of outdoors location, and the college does have that, and also just because where I am and stuff like that, and this kind of goes into problem solving, but as a student I've always mentioned this, I didn't really have much, many options, and I was in the college campus anyway, so I thought it would be best to kind of use what I had. Overall thinking, I think this advert was one of the better adverts. I don't think it was the strongest, I'll go into it when I get into editing, but I think it was a solid advert that really involved the debrief and stuff like that. I think it really involved the kind of more comedic nature they're going for. But let's get into a bit of problem solving I had with this advert. The first problem I kind of had was the phone. This is a little issue, but basically the advert involved having the phone kind of propped up like a person. The problem was that it took this multiple times for me to actually prop it up because of the wind and stuff like that, and also it just being a phone, it was actually difficult to prop up. So the kind of solution I came around this problem was just kind of jamming it into the bench. So in some shots it's a bit more noticeable, you can notice that the phone is just jammed in there. I kind of squished it in, and it's just one of those smaller issues, but it's kind of thinking on the fly, and it shows that kind of thinking on the fly method of, okay, how do we get around this issue? Another issue I had, just this came with a location, and normally I do a location recce, and this is where I go to the location, write down any notes and stuff like that, and check wind and stuff like that, and weather. But because this was a short turnaround, I didn't do a location recce, and this actually came back to kind of bite me, because it was kind of the location that I was filming at was incredibly windy. This made filming audio scenes especially really difficult, because the mic would just pick up the wind. So kind of the solution how I got around this kind of small issue that I had was basically because there's 2 kind of scenes in this movie. There was audio scenes, so this was any time really my character's on screen, and there was no audio scenes, and this was where the phone was on screen. Obviously the phone doesn't have any audio, so I don't need the audio for that scene. So what I basically done was I filmed the audio scenes at a different later date, and kind of filmed it in a different area, and then filmed the phone scenes first. This meant that the audio scenes could have clean audio without wind in it, and the phone scenes that would be kind of windy didn't really matter because I was cutting out the audio. Anyway, another problem I had was I didn't have another person for another shot. I'll show the storyboards, but basically the scene where I throw the phone out the window, there was meant to be an exterior shot of the phone being thrown out the window, and at the time, just because it was such a quick turnaround on the shoot, I didn't have anyone else to help me with the scene, because the scene requires 2 people basically. You had to have someone operating the camera, you had to have someone throwing out the phone, and just because it was kind of a limited time I was doing this and very quick turnaround, unfortunately I was unable to find people. So the solution was basically I just removed the shot. So you notice in the film that there's only one shot of me throwing out and then it cuts back. In the original time I just cut out that second shot from it. And I think it works fine. I think the point I was trying to get kind of demonstrates in it, and I think it plays into it more the comedy, and also just cuts down the advert, and adverts are meant to be pretty small. So I think overall it wasn't a big loss to my film. The second kind of part of the day, and another thing I done all day, was the group project stuff. I think I mentioned this last week, but the group project stuff, we had 3 things left to do, and we kind of got all 3 done. So basically we had we recorded our overall feedback response, and basically what we done was we decided to sit in the classroom, me, Sarah and Albie, we had an audio recorder, we just kind of went over feedback, we kind of talked about what the feedback, interpreted from the feedback, and talked about what we're going to do for the second draft. And the second draft we're kind of working on as we speak, and it probably should be done by like next week. But kind of the biggest kind of feedback we got there wasn't really many big changes from the second draft to the first. I think we're just kind of cutting it down a bit, kind of slimming down scenes. I think Tale of Two Souls is getting slimmed down a bit, making it a bit, just kind of polishing it off. That I think is pretty impressive given the short turnaround we done that group project, that we didn't really have much to change. And I thought I'd done a pretty good job inside of this. Inside of this kind of part, because I think I was really good at like interpreting feedback, really very constructive, kind of listening to everyone's ideas, and I think we definitely took on the feedback. It wasn't just a situation where we just kind of sat there and went, oh well, we don't agree with this and stuff like that. We really talked about the feedback and what could happen from it. Like example, a lot of people said the surrealist film was too weird and stuff like that, and we kind of understood that, but we're not changing that just because it's surrealism. It was meant to be weird, and that was kind of the point of the film, being meant to be comedically weird, but we're not just putting them down for it. So we got sketching out ideas for the second part, and then another thing we done was the overall group project review, and this was basically as a group we went, okay, what was our pros, what was our cons, kind of talked about how we work as a group and stuff like that, and I think this went pretty well. I think it went overall pretty well because we kind of all kind of jived and stuff like that. There was awkward moments because we've had problems with Sarah in the group, but we kind of didn't really mention just because we didn't want to cause conflict. But I think overall we went pretty well. I was very good at listening to people, really understanding people and stuff like that. I was very good coming up with pros and cons and like really just understanding it. And then on the other side, I'd done the opposite, and this was the personal group of my personal review. So basically this is the same as the group one, but I just don't put my personal role in the group. So I just went over pros and cons. I think this was weaker than the group project, I'll be honest, because just because how the group project's been for me personally, it's been very stressful. I kind of rushed this a bit, so it felt just a bit rushed and stuff like that. And I think if I was to do it again, I would be a bit more polished, a bit more editing in, and kind of really go into the pros and cons. So just to get into the kind of pros and cons of this day, actually, I'll say my biggest pro for this day overall was the gift gab advert. I think it was well filmed and stuff like that. I had like minimal issues. I think the scenes looked good. I think there's some good camera work, and stuff like that. And I think there's some good shots, and I think it looks cool, and it really understands the advertiser's brief. And I think visually it's one of the better adverts. And on the other side, I just mentioned this was the personal group review. I didn't think it was the strongest, I'll be honest. I thought there was weak parts of it, and I thought I really kind of got into more my pros and cons and really deconstructed it. Kind of got a bigger video, and this would help me with when I get into the F&P, because then I know what I'm good at, what I'm bad at, and stuff like that. But I think it works what it is, but I think if I had more time and I had more time to do this and stuff like that, I would definitely do a bigger kind of group project review. So overall, I think this was a decent, really good start to a week. Wednesday's always my smallest day, so there's not really much to talk about, but I think this day I kind of really embraced that small time limit. I got a lot of work done. I filmed it. Obviously, I didn't edit the gift gab advert, that would be the next day, but I think I really kind of managed my time well. So let's just get into the next day, and that was Thursday. Okay, Thursday, I filmed the Walkers advert. Just to recap the Walkers advert, this was an advert where it's kind of about breaking the conversation of the I'm fine kind of routine of mental health and stuff like that. So basically it was a man sitting in a room, and then another man walks in, asks him if it's okay, and then he's like, oh no, it's a bag of crisps, and then the comedic element comes from this talking bag of crisps. So let's just get into the problem solving for this. The biggest thing you may notice in this is that I play both roles. That's because basically at the time, again like the day before, I actually didn't have any actors. My people weren't really available to kind of film and stuff like that due to the short time frame that I want to work behind. So basically the kind of solution I came around on this was playing both roles, or actually all three roles actually, because I ended up just voicing the bad Chris. This is not ideal, and I think it's something that I need to work on a bit more, is kind of working out how to better work with people and stuff like that. But I think for the scene it works and stuff like that, but I think for the future, maybe in the F&P, maybe I should work out how to work better with people and try and get more actors in, just because it gives that more professional feel and stuff like that. And another smaller issue I had was basically the original area where I filmed and I storyboarded for an idea was the kind of lounge area upstairs. Unfortunately, at the time I was shooting, most of the day that lounge area was occupied with people, so obviously could not film in there. So basically, the kind of problem solving I came up around it was, because I needed to get it done, location was a massive deal to me personally. I decided to use a different area. So instead of using that main kind of hub area for the upstairs, I decided to use the just a random classroom. I think it works. You don't really know it works. The location and stuff like that. And I think, you know, ideally I would use the hub, but I think it's pretty fine. You don't really notice it. And another issue, the third kind of problem-solving issue I had. Oh no, that was already a problem-solving. Sorry, for the filming. So once I filmed it, I decided to edit both of the gift gaff and Walker's adverts. To go into the edit of these both had kind of their unique flavours and stuff like that, and unique style. So the gift gaff advert, I wanted to make it look very depressing, kind of like a drama, to kind of just play into that gift gaff kind of the feel and the advert I was going for. So I used kind of a very blue tint colour grade. This was, I think, blue tint, but I kind of slightly messed with it. And on the other side, the gift gaff advert, I wanted to make it a bit more upbeat and kind of a bit more brighter and stuff like that. So I used a golden kind of colour feel, and I think they both really projected that kind of colour feel I was going for. But I did have some problems with the edit that I'll go into now. First problem was the Premiere, the program that I use to edit all the adverts. The Premiere isn't the most stable thing in the world, and especially on the college computers that aren't the best. They do crash quite a lot. I would say every hour or maybe 20 minutes. It really is random. And the kind of problem-solving solution I came up with was basically constantly saving and making sure at key moments I save. And this meant that if it crashed, I wouldn't leave a massive amount of work. I just want to think in an ideal world I would have the best computer ever to do these things, but you have to kind of work with what you got, and the solution is kind of saving constantly. And another issue I had was trying to work out what I want to do with the Chris audio, because the Chris audio I never really thought about, but I wanted on Spection is that if you just add the audio over to Chris, it just looks weird. So I spent a lot of time kind of problem solving and solutioning, trying how to make this Chris audio a bit more weirder and stuff like that. So what the solution I think I came up with was I basically use audio effects to make it sound like it was from a car. So it gave it this weird kind of echo godlike effect that I kind of really like, because it adds to the comedy of the situation, makes this Chris kind of omnipotent in a way. And that's another example of problem solving, is that I could easily just shove the audio on there and gone, okay, that's it. But I kind of problem solved it, and I really thought about how can I make this even add to that comedy, add to that kind of thing I'm going for. So basically I just kind of started trying different methods and stuff like that, and really found what worked for me personally. And to go into that, the colour grading was kind of difficult, as I mentioned before. In basic terms, each kind of had a colour grade, with the gift gaff advert having blue, the Walker's advert having yellowy gold, and this is kind of difficult to do because it's kind of working out how to get the perfect colour grade to make it not look silly. And I think I could have really gone too silly or something like that, or made it so it's not visually, you can't really see it. And how I kind of solutioned around it is experimented a lot. I tried out different methods. I asked people in my class who were sitting next to me which looks best and stuff like that, and I kind of I lowered it and stuff like that. So the end goal was normally with Lumetri colour I just use the same Lumetri colour, but with this I decided to slightly mess with it and stuff like that. I think I lowered the saturation and stuff like that, just make it give that slight feel to it. I think the final products I think look really good in the colour grading department. I think it's one of the better ones. So let's get into pros and kind of cons of this day. I would say on the pro side would be the edit on the gift-gab ad. I think the gift-gab ad turned out really well. I think it's actually, out of the 3 ads, probably one of my favourites, because I think the edit is clean and stuff like that. The audio really works, and the music really works for it, and the kind of colour grade I'm going for definitely plays into that kind of comedic drama film I'm going for. And I think it's main pro of the day. And on the con, if I have to try and look at like a con, is I think the edit on the Walker's advert could have been better. I think the music especially didn't really play into the themes I was going for and stuff like that. And I think the colour grade might have been a bit too bright, to a point where it comes off distracting. So if I was to do this again, what I would do is kind of recolour grade it a bit less kind of bright and a bit more natural, to kind of play into that natural kind of feel of mental health and stuff like that. But overall, I think this was another really solid day. I managed to get 2 adverts done, and also in this day, a kind of work experience thing I done was I filmed a debate for Sirius. So I set it up and stuff like this, and then later on in the week I actually edited this debate. It was kind of a big edit. I think it was like an hour and a half debate, and I think it really taught me more freelance kind of real life skills instead of just editing my own kind of little film. So that's kind of like a little kind of side tangent I went on for this day. But overall, I think Thursday was another solid day. I managed to get a lot of work done, managed to get the 2 adverts filmed. I think I done some other general stuff, just kind of cleaning up my website. I don't usually mention, but it's just one of those things where sometimes I just clean up my website, slightly add some work, stuff like that, add on the work, things like that. So overall, again, another solid day. Let's just get into Friday, and that was the kind of last day of the week. Okay, so Friday was when my kind of target from last week, you might remember, that was to replan the Top Chomps advert, really came into fruition. So I kind of dedicate this day to the replanning and filming of the Top Chomps advert. Because I mentioned before, I think the Top Chomps advert was pretty generic and not really in my kind of style, and they really wanted a more stylised kind of thing. So what I decided to do was I kind of replanned it from the ground up. So instead of going with a kind of boring, I would say pretty generic kind of advert where it's just people playing Top Chomps, I decided to go for something a bit more comedic, and so I went with something. I went with basically taking the idea of Top Chomps and putting it into a western kind of standoff style thing. A western, I've talked about this multiple times, but I've always wanted a western. I just haven't really got around or the opportunity to do it. So I thought, why not do like a mini little western? So I kind of planned this out and shot this to kind of have be western. So you have the close up of the eyes, you have the music, you have a colour grade and stuff like that. And I think this idea felt much better, and I think it was a really good pro of the day, is that it felt, this whole kind of advert felt a lot more cleaner and a bit more interesting. I think massively stands out, and I think it is probably my favourite advert overall, because it's just so unique and it's funny and it really fits that kind of 18 to 30 demographic, instead of a generic advert that feels very kind of corporate made. Also this day, I done another thing where I done the project proposals. I actually forgot about the project proposals. Project proposals are just kind of outlining your pros, your cons, like kind of outlining what your project you want to do. This was unique because usually we only do 1 project proposal, but this week we had to do 3. So the gift gab, Top Chomps and Walker's advert. And I'll go into this when I go into the cons, but I did think this was pretty weak, my project proposal, just because I kind of left it last minute. I kind of had to grind them out, and I think once you're doing 3 in a row, the first is okay, but the second and third kind of come off a bit looser and a bit not really aiming for what I'm doing for. And if I had the time, I think I would redo these project proposals, but I think it's one of those things I need to keep in the future, especially once I get into the F&P. That's such a big, my whole entire grade is to kind of really understand how to do project proposals successfully. So to go back to the Top Chomps adverts, I did have some bit of problem solving. One of the first problem solves I had was basically the actors I had was limited. I decided to shoot this at home. 1, because the location I needed was a big table and stuff like that. 2, because by the time I finished planning in a project proposal, I didn't really have a lot of time left in the close, so I thought it'd just be easier just to do it at home, just because college closed early on Friday. And 3, I thought it'd just be a bit more unique location compared to the other 2 that were both shot in the college or college campus. So the kind of one issue I ran into was I had a limited amount of actors. I had my brother, but unfortunately, due to time restraints and stuff like that, he could only do like a couple of scenes. That's why he's in it right at the end. So instead of scrapping the idea or kind of redoing it or whatever, I decided to kind of add to that comedy in that 18 to 30 kind of demographic by making one of the other characters a teddy bear. So it was just him, it was even weirder. I think that definitely adds to the comedy, and I think adds to that kind of 18 to 30 demographic of kind of comedic, kind of very silly and stuff like that. And I think it adds to the film. So overall, I think it's one of those problem-solving situations where the problem was no actors, but the solution for the teddy bear actually added to the film. Another problem I had was the tripod I'm using is actually kind of very broken. I think I mentioned this a couple of times, but it's not the best, especially for kind of lower shots and stuff like that, the shots I needed for this film. So basically the solution I came around was a lot more handheld shots. Most of the shots that are shot with me in it are on a tripod, kind of I'm holding it. That's why you never really see my arms or stuff like that. But every shot with the teddy bear is actually handheld because it's much easier to get kind of more close-up shots of the teddy bear, and also I needed to hold the cards. So there's some scenes where I'm holding a camera here and got the teddy bear kind of arms here holding the cards. So the kind of problem I had was tripod broken. A solution I came around was kind of just, kind of rolling with the punches, kind of, there's a lot more handheld shots, and I think that adds to the kind of rough film going for like a western. It's very handheld, so I think it does work. I also did edit this advert. I think this was one of the cleanest I've done. I didn't really have any issues. I think Premiere crashed a bit and I kind of saved it and stuff like that, but there wasn't really many issues I've saved the edit, and I decided to go for the edit. I looked into very much western colour grades, so I went for this kind of very western colour grade and kind of old school. And I also, this is different, I put an aspect ratio on it because I thought this added to the kind of comedy of the kind of classic western, so it's much more of a tighter colour grade. But I think again this shows us how far I've got really well in my editing. As editing my specials, I really try to always improve myself, and I think this is a good example of it. I think the colour grade works. I think the score, I looked up royalty-free western music, really plays into that kind of western theme I'm going for. I think, and overall I think this was the best edited one. Just to get into pros and cons, I would say my main pro of this day was the Top Chomps advert. I thought the advert was very fun. I thought I really came back from last week where I felt I'd make a very disappointing advert, and I really think I made a fun advert that I could submit to this brief, and it's much more interesting. My original idea that felt a bit too corporate and less creative, whereas this feels very much creative driven and very kind of more into the 18 to 30 demographic. So I think definitely Top Chomps advert, biggest pro of the day. Whereas on the other side, I think the biggest con was those project proposals. I think I mentioned it before, but I've just mentioned it, but because the project proposals were kind of weak, I think especially in the area where what skills I want to learn felt a bit generic and stuff like that. I think I could go into a bit more detail, and I think what I should have done was worked out a specific mini skill I want to learn at this point, because I think I've worked out the big overall skills such as lighting, editing, directing, cinematography, but now I need to work out those simple nugget skills that can really boost that F&P from a merit to distinction. So that's something I definitely keep in mind when I get into the F&P, is really kind of working out what kind of loose skills I can learn from this to keep my F&P and really kind of get to the best grade possible, and also help me in the future when I go into apprenticeships and stuff like that. But overall I think this was another successful day, and I think I really done well. I think the Top Chance advert was a lot of fun. It really embraced that kind of nature and stuff like that, and I think other than the project proposals, I think I really used my time well and managed to plan out a really good advert. So let's just get kind of into an overall wrap up of the week. Okay, overall, as you can kind of get from the energy of the three specific days, I think I ran a really good job this week. I think it was a very kind of, last week I will admit I felt a bit, just coming back from college and stuff like that, a bit tired and a bit kind of, not in the groove, but now I think I've really got into the groove of what I want to do. I'm really embraced the kind of film course, and I think I've really come up with the creative ideas and stuff like that. I'll say my main pro this week was the overall editing, especially looking at colour grading. I think I've really mastered colour grading, and it's something that I really went into this year not being the best at, but I think this year I've really nailed the colour grading. I think each film does have a unique colour grade and a unique style, and you can really separate them. Gift Gap one's obviously blue, more sad, depressing, whereas Walker's one's a bit more upbeat, and then the third one, the Top Chance one, it's obviously a western, so it's a bit more, different aspiration. And I think that really shows my diversity as a filmmaker and person. It's like, I don't just do the same adverts that all look the same. I make my own styles and stuff like that. And I think my main con was the project proposals. I won't go on about this too much, just because I just mentioned the project proposals, but I did think my project proposals were a bit weak, and especially in the skills area, and it's something I really need to keep in mind. Next week when I go into, I think next week I'm doing, I don't really know what I'm doing next week. Just on target review of last week. My target last week was basically to take the Top Trumps advert and make it better, maybe a bit more picture. And I think I've definitely done that. As I've mentioned before, and I won't go on about this, but the Top Trumps advert I thought was really good. I think it's a good example of me looking at target and really improving myself and going, okay, how can I get this better? So on that idea, I think my target for next week and maybe in the future, it depends when I do a project proposal, is to improve my project proposal. And I think I can do this by working out the specific skill I want to learn. Instead of looking overall that I have up to this point, I think I need to nail down a specific skill I need, like a chunk, like, a specific editing technique or a specific cinematography technique to really get myself on that little, sorry, get from that, go from that little kind of merit to distinction. I think I really need to work out the specific kind of project proposal improvement I want to make. But overall, I think this was a decent week. I think I've done really well, and I'm looking forward to next week where we start something a bit more different from the competitive breach. Thanks for watching. This has been week 16 of my